Hello, welcome back to JC's Writing Advice. I'm JC Bybee, indie author, YouTuber, and writer coach. I have 10 books published across 3 or 4 different genres. You can find all of my books and my writer coach services at jcbybee.com. You can also support me on Patreon at jcbybee on Patreon. Links for both should be down below. And maybe help me get less noisy chair. Over on Patreon, you can get exclusive stories and short stories that I've written and I'm working on. So today, as you saw from the title card, we are going to be talking about writing your first line and how to go about that process. So, provided the blank document comes up. There we go. All right, so writing that first line. How do you want to start your book? What do you want your readers to be thinking about? For example, my primary series, the Hero Unit series, is a thriller series. Falls very broadly under that category, but it also is about superheroes. My fellow author and fellow podcast host, Gray Alder, has coined the phrase superhero procedural to describe it, and it fits. It's very apt. So when I'm writing in Hero Unit, my first line needs to grab people's attention, needs to pull them in. And so I can't start off soft. And Hero Unit 1 starts a little slower than I like. Hero Unit 2 also starts a little slower. So Hero Unit 3, Fallout, and spoiler alert if you haven't read this one yet. So Ace looked at the mass of people and shuddered. It was as if the entire population of New Davenport had crowded into one place, all for the same reason: Black Friday. So we know that this scene is potentially going to be a little lighthearted. Black Friday shopping. What can that mean? Especially for the world's most powerful superhero. That draws people in. The beginning of the Beryl Street Murder talks about the location, and that it's not a place that my main character, Aurora, would normally find herself. So, with mysteries and thrillers, you want to set the hook hard. Things like, a good one. Is there a body? What state is the body in? Here's one we could start. So let's say we're doing a murder mystery. It was amazing how much blood was in the human body. And even more so, and even more impressive, I can type honestly, when it was splattered across a room. So there's the first line. It draws people in, gets their attention. We know what's going on. So mysteries and thrillers, we start off like that because we're trying to get people's attention. We're trying to get people interested in the book, interested in the story, hooked immediately. So you say, I can hear some people saying, well, I don't write mystery, I don't write thriller. How do I start my book? I'm a fantasy writer. I can help a little bit with this. I've done some fantasy reading and writing. So my main draw or my main reference point when it comes to fantasy, has always been the Wheel of Time. The Wheel of Time always starts with the exact same paragraph. And then that paragraph leads us into the story. So with fantasy, you are setting certain expectations when you start your book out. Let's see. It's been a little bit. I'm a little rusty. So, over here, we got The Hobbit. We're going to open that up. Get maps. That's fun. Chapter 1, An Unexpected Party. In a hole in the ground, there lived a hobbit. Not a nasty, dirty, wet hole filled with the ends of worms and an oozy smell, nor yet a dry, bare, sandy hole with nothing in it to sit down on or to eat. It was a hobbit hole, and that means comfort. So, we already are asking ourselves, what the heck is a hobbit? Why do hobbits live in holes in the ground? Even if those holes are comfortable. You need to set the kind of expectations that will want the reader, or make the reader want to get the answers to the questions you're asking. It's great to start a book out asking your readers a question, or making your readers ask a question. For example, my YA series that I'm working on right now, the Iridescent Saga. The first book starts out with, and I write it in first person because that's the way the story came to me. I don't have a preference one way or the other. Sometimes first person is easier. It's also harder. I started it out with the line, it's been a while, something along the lines of, let me make one thing perfectly clear. I never wanted to be special. Setting expectations. Why didn't she want to be special? Who is this person? Why is she special? She's telling a version of her life story in these books, and that's the expectation I'm setting up. So, you could go with the classic In Medias Res, where something is happening already in the first chapter. I'm going to use a very generic 80s name. You want to tell I watched G.I. Joe? Ducked behind the barrier as bullets flew past. I thought this was supposed to be an easy job. Suddenly we're setting expectations. Why is he being shot at? Who is he? What is this easy job? So, I'm trying to work on being a little bit better about my vocal tics. I say so an awful lot. And it's starting to bleed into my writing. And I don't like that because it gets repetitive and boring. When you are writing your first line, what do you want your reader to know? And is that a fact that you want them to doubt? Is another way you can do it. Set up a scene where it seems like the situation is hopeless. One of the examples I like, and this isn't a first line necessarily, but in Dresden Files, I don't remember which book it is, but the title is Skin Game. He sets up this premise for Harry throughout the entire book, and it gets into almost a typical Harry Dresden is screwed again situation but he flips it on his head because Harry is starting to think. It's a great book, great series. Very violent, lots of language, though, I will say. So if that's not for you, that's not for you. I love the way the Dresden Files start, too. I don't have one of the books on hand. They're all packed up at the moment. Anyway, so let's work on a first line for a fantasy series. I have... let's see. Do I have a series that's sitting in the back of my head? No, but I do have an older series. The older series is... Let's see here. Do I even want to bring any of those out of the depths of my past? Yeah. So this was a fantasy series I was writing. Very, very much epic fantasy. Don't know that I'll ever go back to it. So I apologize if this gets you interested. Princess Alexandra of the Northern Empire was late. She hated being late. What is she late to? Why is she late? What's the Northern Empire? Who is she? Answers questions being answered. And some of the people say, well, this is very cliche. Yeah. And there are tropes. Yeah. At the same time, sometimes it's a good thing to meet certain reader expectations. Readers expect stuff like this from first lines. They want to see what comes next. They'll read the first line, and if it's a good one, they'll say, okay, this writer has met this expectation. And when I go to the next paragraph, is that expectation continuing? Are they flipping it on their head? This one, then this is probably a bad idea. Don't do this. But if in the next paragraph I go on to describe not a late medieval or early Renaissance esque society with swords and knights and kings and queens, but rather a technocratic society where princess actually means programmer, and she's on her way to work, and she's building a database for one of her clients. That's a different story entirely. And if you want to write that, go for it. That is not my area of expertise. That is another way of looking at it. You are setting up an expectation, and your next paragraph, your next line, continues that expectation or flips that expectation on its head. So think about your first lines. They are important, as I've said in previous videos. If you can't or are struggling with your first line, go to the library, find books in your genre, open them up, read the first line. Don't copy them. Again, plagiarism is bad, but it can give you an idea of how people are expecting books in your genre to start. And you can go with that. You can find something along those lines to help you, or you can try to subvert. And I will say, if you're going to subvert expectations, you need to be careful. Not everybody can do it. And it carries with it the idea that there is a good reason why you're subverting those expectations, not just for simple subversion's sake. If you're just simply doing it because you want to do it, and you want to do it because you don't like this trope or whatever, people are going to see right through you. And some people might like it. Oh, yay, they're subverting the trope. Other people are just going to get bored with it. People are bored with subversion for subversion's sake. So if you're going to take the idea and flip it, you need to do so for a reason. What story are you trying to tell by doing that? And that is something that is a piece of advice I would give any aspiring author. Be careful about how you do things like subversion, or avoiding cliches, or leaning into tropes, or avoiding tropes. People bag on cliches and tropes all the time, and yet will read books that are rife with those things simply because it's comfortable. Writers need to step out of their comfort zone and read outside of our comfort zone. Readers have a comfort zone. They very rarely leave it. It's hard to find a reader that is willing to, a pure reader, somebody who just reads, not a writer, who goes outside of their comfort zone. I mean, you'll have these people that will say that, but then you look at the books that they talk about and review, and it's pretty much all the same thing. Anyway, back to First Lines. I don't do romance. Never really read anything in the romance genre, so I can't help you there. I'm sorry. If you want me to be your writer coach and you're writing romance, I'll have to get back to you. I'll be honest. It's not been something I've spent any time reading. So I don't know how they start. I don't know how they draw the reader in. Let's see, what else? Sci-fi. Sci-fi can go a lot of different ways. Let's see. I'm trying to think. It's been a while since I've read a good sci-fi. I would say you could go with the action tropes, what's happening, what are the bad things that are happening and why, and or you could go with the mystery trope. Lots of sci-fi have a heavy mystery aspect to them without being a mystery. So you can go down that angle. Our journey to the next galaxy started without a hitch, which always concerns me. You get those leaning on superstition is another way that you can approach it, because we all have our little quirks, our little superstitions, and if you give your readers a character who has a quirk of every single launch he's been a part of, something has gone wrong, but all of the missions have been successful. So on his very first mission where nothing goes wrong, he's constantly, or she is constantly worried and stressed and wondering, if nothing went wrong with the launch, what's going to go wrong in the journey, and is it going to be worse? So you play with expectations on that one. So that is what I've got for you today on First Lines. Thanks for stopping by. I hope this gave you a little bit of insight, a little bit of help, a little bit of direction. You can find my other video talking about First Lines on YouTube. You can find all my works and my contact for being a writer coach at jcbybee.com. Also, please support me on Patreon so I don't have a squeaky chair anymore. And with that, I bid you a good day.